Hi guys, welcome to Windsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are in the home garden and it's a glorious evening and I wanted to take some time to show you guys the different varieties that we added into the sun bed at our back property. If you missed it, we've done a series of videos where we added this. This is a brand new bed. It's one of the only places in this house, which we moved into the last year, gets a good amount of sun. So I've packed it with some of my favorite varieties and I wanted to give you a closer look at them and some details. I will link the playlist below where we went through this whole space and turned it from about a 2-foot wide border with plants that were dying and being strangled by fabric to this really thick, beautiful bed. A lot of these things moved with us, so some of them I'll be able to tell you what they are, but not some stats. But I did buy a couple new things that I snuck in here as well. And here it is. I don't have a ton of light left. The sun's right there. So I'm going to try and get through this whole new space before I run out of light. Starting over here and working my way to the right. So last year I actually did some winter sowing jugs, some of which are still in their jugs because it's been a year. But I did manage to get some lupins planted in here. Starting with this itty bitty chandelier lupin. Now, I think the original plant that I planted died, but look at these cute little babies. I think it's enough that hopefully it will survive. We also planted, and this was looking so sad, but it has one little sprig left, Boogie Woogie Sedum from my old house. And then we have Denim and Lace Russian Sage. I know I have some stats somewhere. Actually, I think I have a bucket over here where I stuck a lot of things right where they were. Yes. But there were some that I popped in a bucket. And Denim and Lace was one of them. So you can see it's the plant of the year, perennial of the year from Proven Winners. And it is 28 to 32 tall and about 34 to 38 wide and hardy in zones 4 through 9. That is this Denim and Lace. Now, one of the things I wanted to do in here, because I love a cottage garden, but this is quite a border to not have larger drifts. It's not so huge that I can do a ton of drifts, but I wanted to do repeated elements. So I have this Russian Sage right here. I have another one right here. And then I have a third that you can't really see and isn't mulched yet. Well, we'll walk over there, but it's behind this row of dahlias. So we walk over. We will also appreciate the nights have started getting colder, and that means that these are turning brilliant. But that's that third one. So I like to do things in odd numbers, and this kind of does a 1, 2, 3 kind of thing that I think is going to be beautiful once they fill in. Now, even though I don't like to do drifts, I did take 2 of my Millennium alliums and I split them. So I had 4 and I did a swoop right in front of this Bloomerang lilac. I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I want to say that this gets about 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. And it is a reblooming one if you handle a couple things correctly. Behind it, we have some blue iris, name unknown, some phlox. This came from my old house. Some phlox that also came from my old house that the birds planted. And this is another repeated element. We have one here, and one here. So 1, 2, and 3. And we have a hosta that also, I think this is a Hudson Bay hosta, but it came from my old house, so I don't know that either. An Autumn Joy Sedum. A small Artemisia that's going to be a lot better next year, and a peony which has seen better days. And this is just a white peony, I believe, that again came from my old house. We also have a hibiscus that came from the old house. This one is a Summerific Berry Awesome. It didn't do great this year, but it survived, and I'm hoping it likes being in the ground a lot better. If I kind of peek around here, you can see we're in front of this window, and I showed you in a previous video what it looked like looking out. And this is the basement, these 2 windows, so they are very close to the soil level. So we had to be careful about what kind of plants we planted here and try to do lower things. These 2 little sticks, which are looking worse for wear, our dwarf hollyhocks, right next to a Bathsheba David Austin rose, which is putting on some of its fall colors too. I need to tie this up. I actually need to tie up all my roses. I just haven't done it. One thing I love about this rose is it's fairly limited thorns. Like you can see, there's a couple, and they're wicked when they do exist. But in general, there's not a ton. I need to tie this back up, and I think it's gonna fill this pretty quickly. So we have lower things in front of the window and also kind of looking out. So there's a window well and it can see out, but then also has a pretty view from behind. This right here is a Puckster Blue Butterfly Bush, Buddleia, and it's only going to get 2-ish feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. So it's fairly close to full grown. This is another repeated element, but a little bit closer than some of the others. So we have one here, one right there, and one right here next to my allium. Not everything is repeated. I'm going through some themes, but you can see that next year these are going to look so good with some of these repeated things. But you need a couple repeated elements so that your individual elements can shine. For instance, we have right here a pink Wands Veronica. I don't know the exact variety, but you can kind of see what the blooms will look like when it's a little bit bigger. I also have a Catmint, which is a repeated element. Now this one is a Walker's Low Catmint. We've planted a lot of this one, so it's something that if you followed my channel, you're familiar with. But this Catmint will get about 2 feet tall and up to 2 feet wide, and is hardy zones 3 through 8. So this little spot right here is going to be just tall enough with some of that blue early summer texture. The Buddleia will come in with some of the mid to late summer interest. The hibiscus is late summer. And we just kind of tried to do some of the layers that would take over for each other. Up here we have another unique element. This is a dianthus, pinks. And then we have 3 of one of my favorite ground cover sedums. This one is a sun sparkler called Plum Dazzled. Now it gets a little bit taller than a lot of ground cover sedums. It gets 8 inches tall and 18 inches wide. And you can see it has this beautiful, like purpley colored foliage. This was in a little bit more shade this year than they typically are, and its blooms are already spent, unfortunately. So it's not the best representative, but I'm hoping it kind of just fills the swoop well. We have right here a different sedum that's a nice contract that I've never tried before, but look at that picture of the blooms. This is called a Rockin' Round Bundle of Joy, and it's 10 to 12 inches tall, 16 inches wide, hardy in zones 3 through 8. And I'm hopeful that it will provide like a little round pop right here that contrasts beautifully with this sedum. We have a different Nepeta. You can see the blooms right here as well. This one is a little Trudy, and will get 8 to 10 inches tall and is hardy in zones 4 through 9. So I have a couple different walkers and a couple different of these little Trudies that, depending on where they are, they're doing different things. So we put the one that gets 2 feet tall here, the one that gets 8 to 10 inches tall here, and it'll just kind of create this river that leads back to this window. This is a white balloon flower that moved from our old house. This is a purple sedum that I have no idea what the name is, but it moved with me, and it's actually my favorite sedum. It's bigger. It'll probably get a little bit taller and a lot wider. This is about 1/4 of the plant from my old house. And then in front of it, again, we have a little more sedums that I bought them last year, and they're just getting in their spot. So they're all here. They're just sad. These are that same series, Sun Sparkler, and this is called Firecracker. And you guys, they look like that in the spring. They're so beautiful. This is a little shorter. It'll get 6 inches tall, about 18 inches wide, and is hardy in zones 3 through 9. One of the things we really wanted to do in this bed in particular was put some of those ground covers in spots right away. especially towards the front of the border, they'll work their way back so that in 5 years, we're not doing as much mulch. That's one thing I learned at my old garden is I should have been investing in ground covers earlier. So we did that here. Lesson learned. Moving back, I believe this is a banshee iris. Let's see, yep. So this is a pretty black iris that's a little shorter, which will be an early spring interest. It'll die back. The sedum at that time will start growing. These get cut back, so it'll take over. We have another lupin, and I think my tag got taken out, which is a bummer. So I don't know what one this is exactly. I want to say it's a pink or a red. And as I kind of move over, we have another kind of sedum. This right here is a banana cream daisy. Moving forward, we have pinks. Again, I don't know the variety. Another different kind of Veronica. This is called Magic Show Ever After. It's pretty like light blue. Get 14 to 16 inches tall, 12 inches wide, and is hardy in zones 4 through 8. It's got really pretty dark leaves that I think is gonna contrast nicely with this pink and some of the other texture around it. More of the firecracker. 1, 2, 3 here. So there's a nice spot here, a nice spot there. Moving back, these are a Siberian iris. I'm not sure their name. They were at the old house. I might be able to find it. We'll see. If I can, I'll pop it on the screen. This is another lupin. This one kept its tag. This one, Noble Maiden. Oh, this is pinky purple. That one might be yellow then, if this one is here. We'll figure it out eventually. And as we kind of move over, there's some of the repeated elements, the repeated blocks. We have another peony from the old house. This is a Sarah Bernhardt. And that will be looking nice and beautiful and big, eventually filling the space under these bedroom windows really well. And they're going to release such a good smell. I'm excited to have that there. And then, when they're kind of not looking as good, we have this Munstead Wood David Austin Rose, which is a really deep maroon color. Now, this is supposed to be a little shorter. It only gets 3 by 3. And this moved with us. It was my last one that I had to plant, and it was doing so sad. So I'm so glad it's planted. We've got another Walker's Low Nepeta here. We have some more of the Plum Dazzled ground cover sedum. And then over here, I can never remember what this is called, but it's a white flower that blooms early spring. I want to say like Osiris or something like that. It's not Osiris, but it's close to that. And that's what that is. And then we have some new things, including this. This is a standard. It's a little short. This is a Lavender Chiffon Althea standard that you can see I got on clearance, and I think I actually got some off of that. And it is the zone 5 through 9. We'll get 8 to 12 feet tall and 4 to 6 feet wide. Double flowers blooming in the late summer. Now, this is obviously also already spent, but if I step backwards, that 8 to 12 tall would put it right in this kind of space. And I think that would just be so pretty. And we can kind of keep it pruned so it kind of doesn't block the windows too much. We kept it 4 feet off the wall, so it should barely touch it, and we can keep it pruned off. But I wanted to find a spot for an Althea in this yard. Althea Rose of Sharon's are one of my favorite things, but they can get, some of the more traditional ones get really big. Really big. And I didn't really want to dedicate one of my son's spaces, because I need full sun, to a plant at large. There are some pillar Altheas that Proven Winners have that I looked at and really did consider, but they only get like 3 feet wide and like 12 feet tall. And that just felt very strange to me. So I decided not to pursue it and instead do this. And I think it's going to look beautiful here. It's going to like this spot because it bakes. The ground is looking a little moist because it got well watered this morning and it's not been as hot. I have backed off on the watering. So hopefully Everything is rooting in well, but not too wet. Anyway, behind it we have another Autumn Joy Sedum, so that is a repeated element. We have 1, 2, 3. There's one back there, 4, and I have another one that we're going to pop over there when we move it in time. Right here is a Variegated Sedum that I don't know the variety name. This came with me, and it's also looking kind of sad from its summer in the pot, but you can kind of see what it looks like. And then we have a white iris here, another Loopin. It's hard to see. Let's see, because it did the same thing where the initial leaves died, but they came back. This one is a My Castle Loopin, and we have a itty bitty beautiful hibiscus. Look at this one, you guys. This is a summerific all eyes on me hibiscus, and look at what it's going to look like when it's blooming. These guys get tall, about 42 inches tall and wide, and are hardy in zones 4 through 9. If we step back and imagine this small plant getting about 42 inches tall, that'll fill that really, really well. This barberry is going to be taken out. There's still some fabric there we need to deal with. This is a azalea that is going to stay. It's a nice purple one and an evergreen interest. I'm hoping it's going to survive okay. It is engulfed in fabric. We removed what we could, but I think trying to take out more would hurt it more. But it provides a nice backdrop to our little quick fire hydrangea. Now these are one of my favorite hydrangeas. This one I also got on clearance. It is looking a little sad, but this is what they normally look like a little bit more. These are zones 3 through 8, 3 to 5 feet tall, and they're early blooming. They start out like this really pretty lighter color, white, and then it'll fade to pink. And this is more reminiscent of their fall color. And I cannot wait for this to fill in here. So it's gonna they grow, but they're slower growing. So even if it gets 5 feet, I could probably size control it a little bit more to keep it more like 4 if I wanted to. So hibiscus, little quick fire hydrangea. We talked about this already. This is a phlox that came over when the birds planted. We have a little lavender plant that came from the old house. I don't know what variety. But then this is new. This is a Magic Purple Illusion Veronica, which is more of a purpley color. So I repeated Veronicas, but differed colors. And they're all a little bit different sizes too. This one is 16 to 18 inches tall, 16 inches wide, and is hardy in zones 4 through 9. We have another cute little pinks here. These are all different varieties. An Artemisia. So there are 3 Artemisia. There's one right under the window. That's a little bit sad, but surviving. This one right here, and then we have one more there. And I did this because I hoped it would kind of draw the eye back. Eventually, we're going to develop that more. But sooner rather than later, I have some Brunnera that are super silver that I'm going to try and plant under there. So they'll be the same color and a little bit different texture to draw your eye back. We talked about this. This is an Autumn Joy Sedum. This is an Echinacea that's kind of a peachy color. But this also, I think, draws the eye back. This is I don't have the tag. I'm going to see if I can look it up. Editing Hannah here. This is a heuchera called Grape Expectations. It will get 12 inches tall and 24 inches wide and is hardy in zones 4 through 9. And I think it's so aptly named. It's such a pretty purple color. I have a couple different kinds of heuchera that we're going to be adding to this, but this one is a new one I bought. This is a heuchera that came from my old house. I don't know what kind it is, but I thought a bright lime chartreuse with the purple and the light Artemisia would be just so pretty, especially compared with this oak leaf hydrangea, which we planted last year and had to move because we took some trees out. This guy used to be down there when there were some hemlocks still. Now there are no more hemlocks and it had to move. So these guys were planted. I have some other plants I'm planning to put here, but at the time I did need to hit the easy button just a tiny bit. And I knew this was going to be very rooty. So we got these in, and I'm going to come back and do this probably this year because they're all in the holding area. And these were all plants that I'd already owned and wanted to get in the ground. So this is not really part of the sunbed. It's kind of the tail end, but you can see some of the beautiful layers. There will eventually be a walking path here. We have another lupin. I don't think I mentioned this yet from the thing. This is the governor. We talked about the denim and lace. We talked about the autumn joy sedum. This is an Magnolium we planted earlier this year. I have a Bathsheba David Austin rose, and right here is a magenta peony from my old house. I think this is the last peony I needed to plant that I brought with me. So all told, there were 65 plants that we planted in this really big fell swoop. And I cannot wait to see it next year. I think you can kind of see some of the repeated elements. I tried to balance spring interest, early summer, late summer, color, texture. Some of the bluey green texture versus the purpley texture versus the sedums and the grassiness of the iris. I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear that? I have a neighbor building a fence. So we really worked on balancing the textures, and I think you'll be able to see a lot more next year. These things are not looking like they should. They're stressed. They were in probably way too much shade, but they managed to pull through. And now that they're in the ground, they have a couple weeks before our first hard frost to settle in. I have a couple more weeks to plant, and hopefully we'll continue on a little bit in this area. Right now, I've got these zinnias and dahlias. You can see the line that I'm hoping will continue. Oh, I guess I should talk about this. I was going to talk about it in a different video, but I added another tree. This is a beautiful dogwood. Look at these leaves. It's a little bit of an odd shape, but this is a Venus dogwood, which is the kind my parents have. So I think it'll get 15 to 20 feet tall and wide, fast growing, dark glossy green foliage, beautiful fall color. Zones 5 through 9. Dogwoods are great understory plants that can do okay in shade. And this one gets a little bit of sun, but not much. So it's very tall, not super wide. I'm hoping it'll just kind of fill in this space and provide an anchor on this side of this rose. This is a St. Swithin David Austin rose. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's behind everything. Oh, I've mentioned this a couple times and I don't know if I ever caught it. This is one we're definitely keeping. This dahlia. This isn't the rose. This is the rose. We had a lot of rain earlier, so I think I don't think there's any pretty flowers. This one's looking kind of sad. And it also needs to be trained onto my trellis. But you can see that just like we need to continue here, we need to continue there. And I still have a lot of plants in my hoard to get in the ground, including a couple that I specifically bought as anchor plants in this area. Now my goal had been to get 90% of this planted before the fall. I had to reassess a little bit when I had the problem with my back. I'm going to commit to planting at least 50% of these, and then my goal is actually more like 75% of at least the stuff that are above ground. I have some stuff healed in that I'd really like to get planted too, but it's in a much better space to just stay there because it's semi-planted where it is right now anyway. So there's still a lot of beautiful things. This is my shade section. You can see some of the plants I picked up that I have houses for already. I have some more ground covers to go into. And then we have another shade section and a wild area that needs to be developed. So even though our planting season is winding down, there's still a lot left to come in this garden and at the cottage. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, check back. We're going to be back midweek with some smaller projects where we're doing some prep work and getting a couple larger plants in sections I probably won't spend a ton of time in this season done, but I want to get the anchor plants in. And then we'll come back next Saturday I think, with a fuller video tackling another chunk of the garden. Slowly emptying our plant hoard and developing this garden into the beginnings of the type of garden that I'd really love to see. So if you haven't done so already, please like this video, hit that thumbs up button, turn on notifications to see when I post. I really appreciate you joining me, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.